The arena world of Korthal was known throughout the galaxy as the proving ground of the fiercest warriors. Its interstellar coliseum, carved into a canyon of bone and metal, was where species tested their elite fighters for glory, honor, or survival. No human had ever competed. Not because they weren't invited, but because the galaxy saw them as soft, fragile creatures not worth the bloodshed. That changed when Raya Quinn entered the roster. A former combat medic from Earth's interstellar Peace Corps. Raya had seen more death than most soldiers. She had served on backwater colonies where warlords used civilians as shields and been caught in orbital bombings that left her with burns, shrapnel-laced lungs, and a grim determination. After the death of her squad in a controversial discharge, she vanished, only to resurface on Korthal, signing up for the most violent competition in the known systems. Her first appearance was understated. Short for a gladiator, lean rather, then bulky, she wore light armor and carried only a carbon-threaded blade and a vibrodagger. Spectators laughed, commentators mocked. One alien commentator famously said, "She has the look of prey, not predator." But when the gate dropped, and her first opponent, a Volcari brute known for snapping necks, charged, Raya didn't run. She slid under his swing, climbed his back like a tree, and drove her dagger into the base of his skull with surgical precision. He collapsed, paralyzed, before the crowd had finished laughing. She won the first match in less than a minute. In her next bouts, Raya employed a mixture of evasive tactics, anatomical strikes, and battlefield improvisation. She used the environment, leaping from broken columns, tricking enemies into stepping on hidden mines, and even disarming a four-armed insectoid champion using her own chains. More unsettling than her victories was how she always smiled, not mockingly, but peacefully. As if nothing about the bloodshed disturbed her, alien analysts speculated she was chemically altered. Fans began calling her the White Ghost for her pale armor and haunting calm. Her smile became an icon, stitched on banners painted on ships. But the fighters didn't care for her legend. To them, she was an insult. A human, a baseline not even gene-modded, making fools of them. Then came the quarterfinals. Her opponent, Threxen Dagon, a juggernaut from the war world Draskol, who had undergone bio-rituals to feel pain as euphoria. He entered the arena roaring, covered in blades embedded into his flesh like jewelry. The crowd favored him 9-1. The battle was intense. Raya danced around his attacks, bleeding from near misses, slicing tendons and scoring hits. But Threxen thrived on it. He laughed through pain, powered through blows. Eventually he landed a hit, a hammer fist to her chest that caved her armor and sent her sprawling. She twitched, gasped, and then stopped moving. Medical drones raced in. The arena fell silent. Broadcasters solemnly announced, "Raya Quinn has suffered cardiac arrest. She is clinically dead." Fans mourned. Her body was still. On every world tuned in, the legend of the human who challenged the gods of war seemed to end. But Raya Quinn was not done. Not yet. The arena was deathly quiet. Raya Quinn lay motionless on the blood-streaked sand of Korthal's interstellar coliseum. Her chest armor was crushed inward from the devastating blow dealt by Threxen Dagon. Medical drones hovered over her, scanning, probing, and finally announcing what no one wanted to believe. Her heart had stopped. Official channels broadcast it, galaxy-wide. "The challenger from Earth is dead," one somber commentator declared. Fans wept. Skeptics smirked. For many alien species, it seemed like a natural outcome. How could a human, a so-called death-worlder light, ever hope to endure such punishment? But beneath the surface, inside the damaged body of Raya Quinn, something else was happening. Failsafe, buried deep within her chest cavity, came online. A piece of experimental tech from her time as a medic. A micro-resuscitation implant, developed on Earth for battlefield triage, was still active. It had been dismissed as unreliable and banned in regulated medical practice due to its tendency to misfire or overstimulate the heart. But for Raya, It was a last resort she'd never removed. As her vitals flatlined, the implant detected the drop in activity and discharged a massive electrical pulse directly into her heart. Flash. Inside Raya's mind, a flood of memories surged. Her team bleeding out on a jungle world, her own lungs filling with water after a shuttle crash, her voice whispering comfort to dying soldiers who never made it home. And then, the silence, the calm, and finally, pain. Raya's back arched. The drones shrieked a new reading. Commentators gasped. Across every screen, her body convulsed, then stilled, eyes snapping open. She was alive. The arena erupted into chaos. Some shouted in joy. Others screamed foul play. Dagan took a step back, confused. In his culture, death was sacred. What returned was an affront. "You mock the arena," he bellowed. But Raya didn't answer. She stood up slowly, like rising from a grave. Blood poured from her mouth. Her legs trembled. Her chest still caved inward. But her face was serene. She looked at her opponent, her surroundings, and then she smiled. It wasn't arrogance. It wasn't defiance. It was the same unsettling, calm smile she always wore, one born not from victory but from acceptance. She had crossed the veil and returned. The worst had already happened. There was no fear left. Threxen, rattled, charged again. But something had changed. His confidence fractured. Raya didn't dodge this time. She redirected using his momentum against him, striking surgically. She moved like someone who had shed the weight of mortality. Every blow landed with clinical precision. Every defense was fluid, instinctual. Spectators watched, stunned, as the impossible unfolded. Raya wasn't just surviving. She was dominating. Within minutes, Threxen was down, not dead. Raya spared him. She pressed a blade to his throat, locked eyes with the judges, and then backed away. The match was over. She had won. The announcers struggled for words. She died, one stammered. And then she got back up and smiled. Galactic networks went into overdrive. Conspiracy theories bloomed. Was she a revenant? A cybernetic clone? A spiritual avatar of Earth's wrath? But the truth was simpler and far more terrifying. Raya Quinn was human. And that was enough. The galaxy didn't know what to make of her. Raya Quinn had died in the arena. Her heart had stopped. Her body had gone cold. And yet minutes later she had stood back up, bloodied, broken, and smiling. She defeated Dagan with eerie calm and walked out of the arena under her own power. Not victorious, transcendent. Across the stars, speculation turned to obsession. News feeds dissected the footage frame by frame. Was it cybernetic enhancement? Resurrection tech? Ancient Earth? Necromancy? Theories flooded the infonet. Religious cults on 3 systems declared her a messiah. Others called her an abomination. A rogue Vortari bishop labeled her the grinning revenant, claiming her return from death heralded a war between the living and the damned. Meanwhile, Raya remained silent. She spent the days before the semifinals, alone in the lower barracks, meditating, repairing her armor, and refusing all interview requests. The few who approached her, fighters, medics, even arena staff, were met with the same response. A tired smile and a polite but firm, "I'm not here to be famous. I'm here to finish something." When she stepped into the arena for her next match, the atmosphere had changed. Before, the crowds had cheered or jeered. Now they watched with breathless anticipation, not as spectators, but as witnesses. Her next opponent was Kalzarak, a 6-limbed blade dancer from the Enkren clans, agile, impossibly fast, and unbeaten. His strikes were a blur, and for the first few moments of the fight, he pressed the advantage, carving slices across Raya's arms and legs. But she didn't panic. She didn't even flinch. She bled and smiled. It rattled Kalzarik. He had trained to break bodies, not wills. Raya turned the tide gradually, not with force, but with precision. She observed, adapted. She learned his rhythm, disrupted his footing, forced him into corners. She moved like someone unburdened by consequence, as though pain were nothing more than passing weather. Halfway through the match, she disarmed him with a single fluid motion and handed him his own blade back. "I didn't come to humiliate you," she said. "Fight with honor." Kalzarik stared at her for a long moment. Then, without a word, he dropped his weapons and yielded. The arena erupted, not in confusion, but in reverence. A warrior had chosen defeat over disrespect. Raya bowed to him. By the time she returned to the barracks, the galaxy had given her a new name: the Smiling Ghost. To many, she was a legend in the making. To others, she was a threat, a human who didn't just endure the impossible, but transformed because of it. Arena officials launched investigations into her revival, but nothing illegal surfaced. The crass unit was old tech, legal under current rules, and entirely human-made. The truth unnerved them more than any conspiracy. Raya had done the impossible without breaking a single law. Her resurrection wasn't a miracle of machines or gods. It was a testament to something much harder to explain: human will. The grand finale was more than a fight. It was a spectacle of galactic significance. Raya Quinn, once mocked as a fragile human, now stood at the center of the most revered battleground in the known universe, the Korthal Apex Arena, not as a sideshow or underdog, but as a finalist. Her name was etched into history alongside the galaxy's most fearsome warriors. Only one obstacle remained: Vakor the Eternal. A towering behemoth from the Deshar Dominion, Vakor was the reigning champion, unbeaten in 31 matches, cybernetically reinforced, and bred specifically for war. He was more war machine than man, with muscles like coiled steel and a brain augmented by tactical AIs. His past opponents hadn't just lost, they'd been obliterated. In pre-fight interviews, Vakor showed no concern. "The human is tenacious," he admitted. "But in the end, flesh is weak." Raya said nothing. No posturing, no predictions. Just a nod and a half-smile. The final match began under twin suns as crowds in the billions tuned in across the stars. The arena's metal floor hummed with tension. Combatants entered from opposite ends, Vakor like a juggernaut in obsidian armor, Raya in her patched-up suit, dented, scorched, and utterly human. Vakor charged like a battering ram. His blows dented the arena walls, cracked steel, and sent shockwaves through the stands. Raya dodged, ducked, rolled, barely surviving the onslaught. Her ribs fractured, her leg gave out, and blood stained her visor. Still, she smiled. Each time Vakor knocked her down, she got back up, bruised, limping, breathing like broken glass, but rising, again and again. The crowd fell silent. Even Vakor hesitated. For the first time in his career, he saw something unfamiliar in his opponent's eyes. Not fear, not hate, but unshakable purpose. "You can't win," he growled, panting. "You're dying." "I already died," Raya whispered, voice hoarse through her helmet. "That part's over." She moved then, not with speed, but with clarity. She didn't fight Vakor's strength. She used his weight, redirected his aggression. She lured him into traps of his own making, slammed him into arena walls, twisted under his arms, and delivered punishing counterblows. With a final maneuver, she latched onto his back, tore open the armor housing his neural sync ports, and jabbed her blade deep inside. The great Vakor fell to one knee, then collapsed. Raya stood over him, not triumphant but steady. She didn't gloat. She didn't raise her arms. She simply looked to the crowd and smiled. Silence hung like a fog. Then slowly the entire arena, aliens of all shapes, creeds, and worlds, stood and cheered. Not for spectacle, not for blood, but for a human who had transcended the limits of flesh and fear to embody something timeless. Victory wasn't just her survival, it was what she represented. That strength wasn't just about power, it was about rising after you fall, standing after you break, and smiling in the face of the impossible. Raya Quinn became a legend that day, not because she killed the strongest, but because she had already conquered death and kept going.